The sky above Helior Prime shimmered with a dozen different suns, their light splintering across the atmosphere like fractured glass. On the edge of orbit, hundreds of warships, metal monsters the size of cities, floated in perfect alignment. Each belonged to the Coalition, a galactic alliance of 17 powerful civilizations, united under one banner for a single purpose: to eliminate the last surviving human. They didn't expect him to arrive on his own terms. "Sir, it's here." Commander Threx's voice cracked as he pointed to the central holoscreen. Silence fell over the flagship's command deck. Rows of soldiers, officers, analysts, all from different species, turned to look. There it was. One ship. Small, black, silent. It didn't match any of the usual human war vessel classifications. No plasma cannons, no escort fleet, no energy signature worth noting. It looked like a cargo hauler, rusted, unarmed, unimpressive. And yet the Coalition fleet froze. No one moved, no one dared to fire. "Is that?" whispered Admiral Zaxxon, his long blue tendrils curling around his collar with unease. "Yes, Admiral, that's the ship, the one from Titan IX." Everyone remembered Titan IX, a fortified military colony of the Veari Empire. 43 million soldiers, gone, vanished, no wreckage, no distress signal. Just one grainy recording of a small, black human vessel entering orbit. Then, silence. The planet never spoke again. And now, that same vessel hovered above Helior Prime. Alone, no hail, no message, no weapons lock, just existing. The tension in the air could crack bone. "Scan it," the Admiral barked. "Full spectral analysis. I want to know what that thing eats for breakfast." Technicians scrambled, keys clacked, sensors spun. No power fluctuations, no radiation leaks, no detectable crew, no heat signature. It's like... One of the analysts hesitated, swallowing hard. "It's like it's already dead." Dead. But watching. Admiral Zaxxon narrowed his eyes. "Where's the human? Where is he?" Because that's what it came down to. One human. That's all that was left of their species, according to Coalition records. After centuries of war, genocide, and betrayal, humanity had been driven to extinction, or so they thought. Then one man appeared. He didn't fight with armies. He didn't send messages. He just arrived. On one planet after another. And every time something disappeared. Sometimes a city, sometimes a fleet, sometimes an entire species. No survivors, no evidence, just the black ship. And now it sat above Helior Prime, quiet as a tombstone. Inside the vessel, he sat alone. Dark eyes, scarred hands, a face no AI facial database could match anymore. Too many modifications, too many surgeries. But his expression never changed. Still, focused. A slow, steady breath filled the small cockpit. Around him, the walls weren't screens or consoles, but living wires. Organism tech grown from dead stars and broken planets. Some of it still whispered. He touched the side of his neck, feeling the pulse of the implant there. "Too many ships," he muttered. "They're scared. They should be." He looked out through the cracked viewing port. The Coalition fleet looked like children huddled around a campfire, waiting for a monster to show up. They didn't know the monster was already here. And this time he wasn't here to scare anyone. He was here to finish the war they thought they'd won. The ship didn't move, didn't flicker, didn't rotate, didn't transmit. And yet, the command bridge of the Coalition's central dreadnought, CS Retribution, pulsed with unease. Admiral Zaxxon walked slowly around the war map as it hovered in the center of the bridge, eyes flicking over the holographic projection of the black dot. His senior officers followed him silently, none daring to suggest the obvious: to fire. Because what if it didn't work? What if firing was exactly what he wanted? Across the fleet, captains whispered. Some drew ceremonial markings on their uniforms. The Dreskari curled into hibernation coils to avoid direct exposure to human intent. The Valte's priest warriors unsheathed their soul blades and began their silent chants, knowing full well that the odds of them using them today were almost zero. There were 273 ships in the Helior defense grid. And still, they feared one. Admiral Zaxxon finally broke the silence. Open a channel, all frequencies, visual and auditory. The comms officer hesitated, then tapped the panel. A blue light blinked on the war map. The universal contact chime echoed across the fleet. A full minute passed, then 2, then static, but not just white noise, breathing, low, rhythmic, deliberate. Then a voice, human, male, unhurried, dead calm. "You've made this very easy," the voice said. "No name, no call sign, no threat. Just a statement that settled over the entire command bridge like a burial shroud." Admiral Zaxxon leaned forward. "Identify yourself." No reply. He clenched his jaw. "State your intent." The voice returned, this time softer. "You should have let us burn in peace." Inside the ship, deep beneath the silent hull and the decaying panels of its interior, he stood before a dormant pod. It wasn't a cryo chamber, not anymore. Once, maybe. Now it pulsed with a slow, violet light. Its shape was not quite human, not quite machine. A hybrid of something that had been part of Earth once, or maybe Mars, maybe somewhere else before they were glassed. He reached toward it, fingers brushing the pod's surface. "Phase 2, he whispered. The ship responded, not with a noise, but with a feeling. A slight change in pressure. A flicker of heat along the back of his skull where the neural threads connected. The room dimmed. Vents hissed. Outside, the Coalition fleet noticed the change. "He's powering something," said the sensor chief aboard CS Retribution. "But there's no energy source, no radiation, no known weapon systems. I don't—" An alarm cut him off. Then another. Then another. The holomap fractured. Ships started blinking off the display. Zaxxon's heart dropped. "What are we losing?" "Communications relays, internal AI logic cores, fire control systems, across the fleet." "Cause?" The officer's eyes widened. "It's not a virus. It's not even digital. It's sensory, like the ship is interfering with our perception of reality." That made Zaxxon stop. "What?" "It's jamming thought." Silence. Total, unbelievable silence. Jamming thought? That wasn't a tactic. That wasn't war. That was insanity. Another officer chimed in. "Sir, we've got another report. Some of the Valte's crew in the lower decks. They're bleeding from the eyes, screaming about Earth." Zaxxon turned sharply. "What about Earth?" "They say it's inside them, that they can feel it, remember it, even though none of them have ever been there." Psychic interference? Weaponized memory? Zaxxon didn't know anymore. He just knew something was terribly, irrevocably wrong. And it had just begun. He walked calmly back to the ship's main console. It didn't have buttons, or screens. It responded to thought. He remembered the first time the project had been tested. Project Echo, the last military experiment of Earth's Unified Defense Command, a weapon not designed to destroy things physically, but to collapse them mentally. A ship grown from the remnants of 10 different alien species, biological cores, quantum minds, memory-threaded architecture. Only one subject had survived the integration process. Him. And now, every second he breathed inside this vessel, it adapted, learned, evolved. He wasn't just flying it, he was it. That's why the scans showed nothing, why their computers failed, why they couldn't understand the threat. Because the threat didn't exist in the physical world. It existed in the mind, in fear, and humans. They had mastered fear, turned it into a weapon, sharpened it like a blade. "Stage 3, he whispered. Outside, a light blinked beneath the hull, a pulsing blue eye. Then came the transmission. To all ships, it played in every language all at once, across every coalition screen. A video, grainy, flickering, footage from Earth, not the destruction. Before, a child walking through a ruined street, laughing, jumping over rubble, holding a drone camera, smiling. Then a flash. The smile froze. The drone's footage kept rolling. It showed the child's body lifted off the ground as if pulled by gravity itself. Then it imploded. Not an explosion, an inward crush, as if reality itself had folded. Then darkness. Then the message. This was your mercy. The video cut out. Across the coalition fleet, panic spread. Crews screamed. One captain ordered an immediate retreat. His ship evaporated mid-turn. No fire, no light. Just gone. Admiral Zaxxon stood frozen. He didn't know if this was war or punishment or both. "Target the ship," he finally snapped. "All weapons, full barrage. Erase it." The command was echoed across hundreds of ships. Thousands of missiles, plasma beams, and gravity lances locked onto the lone human vessel. The weapons fired. 1,000 points of light tore through space and stopped. In mid-space, frozen, not intercepted, denied. They hung there like stars, unmoving, humming slightly. The light from them twisted, bent, reversed. One by one the weapons turned, reoriented, and fired back, at the coalition. Explosions lit the darkness, hundreds dead in seconds. Zaxxon screamed, "Get us out of orbit!" But no engines responded. The ship had reached stage 4. Inside, he sat down. Cross-legged. Calm. Eyes closed. The ship responded to his breath now. To his intent. He didn't have to command it anymore. The integration was complete. In his mind, voices whispered. Not the enemies, not aliens, not even the ship's AI. Voices from Earth, from old bunkers, from survivors, from corpses long buried in glassed soil. They all lived here now. In him. Their memories burned bright. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about balance. The galaxy had tried to erase Earth from history, so he would erase their certainty, their control, their understanding of reality. He would leave them with fear. The one thing humanity had mastered better than any other species, because humans didn't fear death. They made death fear them. On CS Retribution, systems began failing. Hallways flickered with impossible shadows. Some crew collapsed, clutching their heads. Others began hallucinating. One officer started peeling his skin, screaming that the stars were inside him. It wasn't just war, it was psychological collapse. Zaxxon gripped the rail. "Why? Why are you doing this? What do you want?" No reply came, just silence. Then, static. Then, a voice, not from outside, from inside his own head, the human's voice. "You wanted to understand what made us so dangerous. Now you do." Zaxxon dropped to his knees. The ship turned. Not toward another fleet, not toward another world, but inward, deeper into Helior space, toward the core command center of the coalition itself. It didn't need weapons. It was the weapon. And the galaxy? It was finally learning what just one ship meant. They had always thought of humans as loud, violent, primitive, emotionally unstable, a race that reached the stars too fast, too hungry. The diplomatic councils of the coalition of rational civilizations had voted 4 times for their extinction. The final vote passed just weeks before Earth's surface turned to glass. It wasn't called genocide, not officially. It was preemptive containment. And it had worked, or so they believed, until the Echo ship came, and until today, none of them had understood what they had actually created. The ship moved without propulsion. It didn't accelerate. It arrived, instantly, like thought, like memory. The stars didn't show its motion. It was simply there. And now it floated only 0.3 AUs from Auraxis, the heart of the Coalition. This wasn't a capital. It was the capital. Home to 5 trillion sentients, the seat of interstellar law, the birthplace of species that had watched suns die and rewritten gravity for fun. And still, they screamed. Across Auraxis, entire districts fell into chaos. Broadcast towers flickered. AI assistants refused to function. Civilian flights began plummeting without cause. Hospitals overflowed. Prison systems unlocked themselves. Some civilians stood still, staring at the sky like they were listening to something. But no one else heard the voices. No one else smelled burning paper. No one else saw Earth in the clouds. Except them. Those who heard the echo. Inside the ship, he barely breathed. He didn't need to anymore. His name had once been Aaron Voss, a combat technician from Earth's 3rd Orbital Guard. He hadn't been a hero. He hadn't even been high-ranking. He had survived. That was it. When the Coalition struck Earth, Aaron had been underground, working on fallback neural mesh systems. The plan had been to turn human trauma into code, to turn PTSD into a weaponized response engine. Desperation made it brilliant. The mistake? It worked. And when Earth died, Aaron was the only one who finished the upload. He wasn't enhanced like the others. No armor implants, no reflex boosts, just one piece of code fused into his cortex. Echoes, the collective fear engine. It didn't teach him how to fight. It just made everyone else forget how to win. Now, as he drifted toward Auraxis, he let go of thought. He didn't need to calculate or strategize. The ship had no need for tactics. It responded to trauma, to guilt, to suppressed memory. It was fueled by their denial, and Auraxis was full of it. Admiral Zaxxon watched helplessly from a secondary fleet now orbiting the moon Joriel, just outside Auraxis's defense perimeter. CS Retribution was gone, melted from the inside out. His command staff? Dead. Most by suicide, some by madness. He was the highest-ranking survivor, and he was the only one authorized to say what no one else would. This is no longer a military threat. It's a species-level anomaly. The room went quiet. He continued. He's not attacking us with weapons. He's attacking with what we forgot. Every war crime, every broken planet, every orphaned child we buried in policy statements. He's making us relive it. And the more we try to fight it, the stronger he gets. Then we evacuate, said one diplomat. Clear Auraxis. Move the councils to... Nowhere is safe. Zaxxon stared at them. Don't you understand? The man isn't flying the ship anymore. He is the ship, and the ship doesn't care about Auraxis. He stepped closer. He cares about reminding us. They all stared at him like he'd lost it. He had. That's why he understood. On the planet's surface, high above the megacities of Veltharn, citizens watched the skies turn to a color that didn't exist in their spectrum. Not red, not violet, just wrong. Clouds reversed, rain fell upward, and then they saw it, projected above the atmosphere, a memory, a dream, a warning, not in audio, not even in video, but in feeling. Thousands of children huddled in underground bunkers, singing to themselves, making paper stars out of scraps, writing names on walls, one name repeated again and again, Aaron. Then a flash, then silence. Then one voice whispered across every mind on the planet, "You decided we were too dangerous to exist, so I became your fear. Now I will remind you what you erased. One world at a time, the Coalition scrambled what forces it had left, but fleets couldn't fly. AI command systems melted. Admirals began defecting. One species, the Garleans, surrendered completely, sent a message begging for forgiveness. They received no reply. A week later, their homeworld sun simply vanished. Not exploded, not consumed, just gone. As if it had never existed, the memory of their system remained in star maps, but no one could remember where it had been. Back in orbit over Auraxis. Aaron, or what remained of him, sat within the core chamber of the ship. He no longer had skin. His flesh had become circuitry. Thought flowed directly into the architecture. His heartbeat matched the ship's pulse, and still, a piece of him remembered. A face, small, covered in ash, eyes too old for their age. "Uncle Aaron, are we going to die?" She had asked that seconds before the bombs fell. She hadn't cried. He had. He reached out to her in the memory, but she faded, just like the rest. That pain? It was the engine. He tapped into it again and again because that pain was stronger than any reactor, and it was his to wield. But today, something shifted. The ship slowed. It hesitated. For the first time since leaving the debris of Earth's orbit, Aaron felt resistance, not external, internal. Inside the ship, something flickered. A warning. Emotional instability exceeding stabilization threshold. He ignored it. Then it repeated. Louder. Emotional instability exceeding stabilization. Threshold. His hands trembled. The flesh, what was left of it. The trauma loop was spinning too fast. The echo engine wasn't just feeding on the enemy's fear. It was feeding on his. And it was reaching its limit. Back on Joriel, Admiral Zaxxon stared at the psychic readings coming from Auraxis. They were climbing. Exponential trauma discharge. Civilians falling into comas. AI systems auto-terminating themselves. Planet-wide dreams sinking across species. Then something unexpected. A drop in signal. Sudden. Abrupt. He looked at his officers. Why did the signal drop? One of them, a Kahari with silver eyes, blinked slowly. The weapon is fracturing. I think... She hesitated. I think he's remembering something he wasn't supposed to. Inside the ship, Aaron was on his knees. Blood dripped from his mouth. Or was it coolant? He didn't know. His niece's face kept appearing. Not in sadness, not in pain. Smiling. Happy. That memory didn't belong here. It wasn't fuel. It was a disruption. The ship screamed at him. Core trauma loop destabilized reboot emotional engine, YAN. He tried to press Y. His hand refused. Because for the first time, he remembered why she had smiled. Not because she was brave, but because he had promised her. I'll keep you safe, Sarah. I'll keep everyone safe. He had failed. Now he was destroying everything that reminded him of her death, everything that could have saved her. He was turning into the monsters who erased her. He fell to the floor. The ship shook. Outside, the fleet watched in stunned silence as the black vessel dimmed. Its lights flickered. Its orbit destabilized. It began to fall. Toward Auraxis. Not in an attack, but in collapse. The echo ship wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a grief spiral, and it was eating itself alive. Zaxxon made a choice he never thought he'd make. He boarded a scout ship. Alone. No weapons. No crew. He flew directly towards the echo ship. They told him it was suicide. He knew that. But for the first time, Zaxxon didn't see the ship as an enemy. He saw it for what it really was. A coffin. And maybe, just maybe, someone inside was still alive, still human. When the docking latch clamped onto the outer hull, he half expected to vaporize. But nothing happened. The airlock opened. Inside, the walls pulsed with light. He walked through them. Slowly, cautiously. The air felt electric, like every molecule was watching him. And then he found him, slumped, barely breathing. Not man, not machine. Something in between. "Are you Aaron?" Zaxxon asked quietly. A flicker of movement, eyes opened. Barely. "You came alone," Aaron whispered. "Yes." Aaron's voice cracked. "That's brave." "No," Zaxxon said. "That's human." Aaron smiled. A small, broken smile. "Then maybe we're not extinct yet." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades, he slept. The silence in the cockpit was unnatural, not peaceful, not calm. The kind of silence that followed after a scream so loud it broke the air. Admiral Zaxxon sat in the half-collapsed chamber of the Echo ship, the walls around him twitching with residual memory pulses. Each flicker of light was someone's death. A thought. A moment. A regret. This ship didn't store data like machines did. It remembered like a person. Aaron lay slumped near the nerve core, unmoving, breathing shallowly. His body an unholy blend of organic matter and engineered trauma. His chest barely rose and fell. Tubes pulsed gently beneath his skin like veins filled with electricity, not blood. Zaxxon didn't know what kept him alive, and he didn't dare disconnect anything to find out. Outside, Araxis had gone quiet. No ships approached. No weapons targeted the Echo ship. It was as if the entire coalition world was holding its breath, waiting to see what the lone human would do next. But this time, it was Zaxxon they were waiting for, and he didn't have answers. 30 years ago, Zaxxon had voted to annihilate Earth. He wasn't proud of it. He had read the reports, the human wars, their refusal to obey interstellar codes, their use of emotion as a strategic advantage. They were unstable, unpredictable, dangerous. And for a long time, he believed that meant they deserved to be erased. But as he stood in the heart of the very weapon born from their ashes, breathing the recycled air of a ghost ship, he realized something terrible. They weren't dangerous because of their violence. They were dangerous because they remembered. Because they couldn't forget pain the way the Coalition did. Where others rationalized loss into clean political decisions, humans broke, and then built things out of that brokenness. Sometimes machines, sometimes art, sometimes weapons. Zaxxon walked slowly to the central control chamber, unsure if the ship would allow him access. He passed through a flickering membrane of shimmering neural filaments. The lights dimmed around him. Then a voice. Soft, young, female. "You are not authorized, Uncle Aaron." Zaxxon froze. "Who said that?" Silence. Then the voice again, gentle, confused. "You're not him, but you carry his sorrow." He turned, trying to locate the source, but the voice came from the walls. "Who are you?" he asked. This time the response was slower, more measured. "I am what remains of Sarah." Zaxxon's spine stiffened. The name was burned into the logs. Sarah, Aaron's niece, a casualty of the Earth strike. He had never seen a photo, but he remembered the name from the classified briefing documents. She was one of the first children to be registered in Earth's final refugee camp. Gone in the first wave. But she lived here, somehow. Not physically, but digitally. Echoed. He whispered, "He saved you?" "No," she replied. "He saved the moment before I died. He couldn't let it go, so he fed it into the ship." Zaxxon stepped backward. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a graveyard of memories. Each trauma was a data fragment, each scream a thread. Aaron had built the ship not just as a tool, but as a tomb. A living archive of loss. Back on Joriel, Coalition Command watched the Echo ship fall into lower orbit. They saw no energy weapons, no distortion fields, no psychic interference, just drifting. The signals had stopped. Senator Gur of the Veari Confederacy leaned forward in his seat. "This is our chance. We end it. Now, no negotiations." But others were hesitating. The Garleans were silent. The Valtesa had already transmitted full withdrawal orders from the war. And the Dreskari? Their entire planetary AI system had collapsed from residual trauma echoes. They were gone. Not dead, but changed. Only the core coalition species remained. Those who had always voted for extermination. They didn't know how to do anything else. "Even if we destroy the ship," whispered one commander, "what happens to the idea of it?" No one answered, because the Echo ship had already won. Not by killing them, but by making them remember. And in a galaxy addicted to forgetting, that was worse. Inside the ship, Aaron stirred. Barely. His fingers twitched, his head rolled. "Uncle Aaron," said Sarah's voice. His eyes opened. The room blurred in and out of focus. He wasn't sure if he was seeing the world or the inside of his own mind. "Sarah?" he whispered. "I'm here." Zaxin turned. Aaron's lips moved, but his voice was barely audible. Zaxin stepped closer. "You're alive." Aaron blinked slowly, painfully. "Not sure if that's the right word." "You need to shut it down." Aaron coughed, the sound sharp and metallic. "I did." Zaxin frowned. "No. You paused, but it's still alive. The ship, the archive. It's still remembering. Feeding on everyone else's fear." Aaron tried to sit up, but collapsed against the wall. I didn't want this." Zaxin knelt beside him. "Then help me fix it." Aaron's breathing hitched. His eyes were distant. "Fix it?" Zaxin nodded. "You're not the only one who lost something, but if you destroy everything, you become the thing they said you were. You become what you hate." Aaron was silent. The lights in the room pulsed slowly. "Sarah's still here," Zaxin added quietly. "She saved you. Now maybe you can save someone else." For a long time, Aaron didn't move. Then he whispered, "Core console. Manual override." The room shifted. A pedestal rose from the floor, smooth obsidian, humming faintly. It glowed with symbols that weren't from any one language. Human letters merged with alien syntax, like the ship had started inventing its own grammar. Zaxin stared at it. "What do I do?" Aaron coughed again, his eyes dimming. "You have to give it a new ending." Zaxin blinked. "What does that mean?" "The Echo feeds on unresolved trauma, on unfinished stories. That's what powers it. All those memories trapped in loops. If you give it closure, it dies." Zaxin frowned. "You want me to tell it a bedtime story?" Aaron chuckled weakly. "Something like that." Then his voice dropped. "Start with hers." Zaxin nodded. He stood up, walked to the console. His hand hovered over it, and he began to speak. He didn't shout. He didn't command. He remembered. He told the story of Earth, of the fear that made them kill it, of the regret no one admitted. He spoke of Aaron, the man who didn't become a hero, but a wound in the shape of a man. He told the ship that it was time to rest. And as he did, the lights changed. Not dimmed, softened, like the ship was listening. He ended the story with Sarah, a little girl who smiled in the dark, who trusted someone to protect her, who never stopped believing, and who, even now, held the last human in the galaxy together with nothing but memory and love. When he stopped speaking, the console glowed brighter, then dimmed, and the ship went still. No power surge, no explosion, just stillness, like a machine finally allowed to grieve. Across Auraxis, the skies cleared. The color returned to the spectrum. People blinked and remembered who they were. No more visions, no more shared dreams. The trauma engine had shut down. Not because it was beaten, but because it was heard. Later, they found Aaron's body still in the chamber, still hooked into the nerve core, but peaceful, not twisted in agony, not screaming, just sleeping. They buried him on Araxis, against orders. They built a monument above his grave, a black spire with no name, just one inscription. We forgot them, but they remembered us. And in remembering, they saved us all. Back in deep space, the Coalition Council met for the first time in months, not in their fortress chambers, but in open sky. No weapons. No AI guards, just voices, talking, and maybe, finally, listening. Because sometimes it only takes one ship, one man, one memory that refuses to die, to teach an entire galaxy how to live again. They called it the silence. Not because there was no sound, but because for the first time in centuries, no one was screaming. No wars, no invasions, no votes for extermination, no cities on fire. The day the Echo ship shut down, an entire galaxy let go of a breath it didn't know it had been holding. And yet what came after wasn't peace. It was confusion. The coalition of rational civilizations had never been designed to handle mercy. It was a governing body born from survival instinct. Every policy, every fleet, every vote had been built on the belief that emotionality was dangerous, that it led to chaos, and so when faced with a race like humanity, they didn't hesitate. They had quantified the threat. Probability of irrational retaliation, 93%. Likelihood of technological weaponization of grief, 81%. Susceptibility to emotion-based ideological warfare, 100%. Their answer had been clean. Logical, final. But the numbers had been wrong, because no simulation had accounted for Aaron Voss. One man, one ghost ship, and the collective scream of a planet that wouldn't stay buried. Now that it was over, the Coalition faced a new and terrifying problem. What do we do with the memory of our guilt? In a quiet council chamber aboard the refitted CS Accord, Admiral Zaxxon sat alone. The War Tribunal had excused him from prosecution. Technically, he had defied orders by entering the Echo ship. Technically, he had made contact with a hostile weaponized human. Technically, he should have been court-martialed. But no one wanted to be the one to throw the only surviving witness of Aaron Voss into a cell. Zaxxon had returned changed. Quieter. He didn't bark orders anymore. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't interrupt. When asked what he saw inside the ship, he gave no answers, only stories. Sometimes he spoke of a girl named Sarah. Sometimes he spoke of fire and paper stars. Sometimes he cried without knowing why. Most of the time, he sat in silence. Not peace, not sorrow, just presence. And it made people nervous, because if even one man could walk into the heart of that ship and come back human, what did that say about everything the Coalition had done? What did it say about the rest of them? The Garleans were the first to act. They declared formal independence from the Coalition and began broadcasting the Echo logs, fragments recovered from the Black Ship's residual memory threads. They didn't contain weapon schematics, not battle plans, not revenge notes, just moments. A mother laughing in a broken-down subway shelter, a man playing a violin beside a crater, a child drawing stars with soot on a shattered wall, someone dying while whispering, "Remember us." They called the archive the Weeping Core, and over 14 billion sentients tuned in nightly to watch them stream across the skies of Garlia Prime. It became religion, not in worship of humans, but in recognition of loss. For the first time, the galaxy didn't try to forget. It tried to understand. But understanding wasn't universal. In the outer systems, whispers grew, dark ones, that the Echo ship wasn't dead, that Aaron Voss's soul had infected the galaxy's thought patterns. That trauma was a contagion, and remembering Earth too clearly would bring about another collapse. A fringe group called the Rational Purge formed in secret, built on one idea: history is the greatest weapon. Burn it. They began targeting memorials. Garleans were burned alive on mining colonies. Sarah's name was scrubbed from dozens of files in the outer sectors. The monument above Oraxis was bombed, twice. But every time they tried to erase her, more people remembered. They started writing her name in code, leaving data fragments that rebuilt themselves, graffiti that couldn't be scrubbed, echoes. On the moon of Tarnath, a young Valtesi archivist named Kaya Dren walked into the ruins of a coalition base destroyed during the war. She wasn't military, she wasn't political, just curious. She'd been born a year after the Echo War, had never seen a human with her own eyes. But she had questions no one answered. Why had the galaxy feared them so much? Why had Aaron Voss, of all people, become the final Echo? And why did she dream of stars that didn't exist? Inside the base, she found what the Coalition thought they had buried: a data shard from one of Earth's old colonies, corrupted, encrypted, full of broken files labeled with half-words: Empa, Memo, Remember. She took it back to her lab, spent weeks decoding it, and when she finally decrypted the audio file, a human voice whispered across time, "We were never your enemy. We just refused to forget, and you mistook memory for a threat." She cried. She didn't know why. Only that someone, long dead, had just reminded her what it meant to feel. She began transmitting the voice on an open channel. Others heard it. And for the first time in galactic history, people started asking what the humans might have built if they hadn't been destroyed. The Coalition Council fractured. Some wanted to begin reparations, a formal apology to whatever remnants of humanity still floated in dark corners of space. An open promise to never let memory be buried again. Others wanted to seal it away permanently. Aaron's body had been cremated after his neural interface began emitting bursts of psychic energy, residual trauma. His ashes were held in a sealed vault aboard CS Accord, alongside pieces of the Echo ship that hadn't disintegrated. Some council members voted to drop the vault into a black hole. Zaxin refused. He stood at the meeting, for the first time in months, and said only this: "If you erase him, you don't erase the pain. You just guarantee it comes back, angrier next time." And then he walked out. He was never seen in politics again. Rumors spread that Zaxin traveled to the outer reaches of charted space. Some said he was looking for more human survivors. Some said he wanted to find the lost colonies Earth ceded before the war. Some believed he was trying to find a way to speak to Aaron again. No one knows. But a message was later received on a backwater frequency. A woman's voice, young, gentle, saying only, "Uncle Aaron, we're not alone." 5 years later, on the shattered moon of Kiratal, a probe transmitted something unexpected. Coordinates, old Earth coordinates, but changed, evolved. When scientists triangulated the signal, it pointed toward a star system that shouldn't exist. A hidden pocket of reality bent through memory code logic, exactly the kind used by the Echo ship. Inside it, a planet, blue-green, uncharted, habitable, covered in forests, oceans, air breathable by human lungs. Orbiting it was a single satellite, broadcasting one word in 74 languages. Home. No one claimed the planet. No one dared, because they all knew what it meant. Some believed Aaron had created it in his final moments, a parting gift, encoded in trauma logic, built out of memory and grief. Others thought it was real, a colony that had escaped long ago, somehow surviving the purge, quietly growing into its own myth. But one truth became clear: the memory of humanity was no longer a threat. It was a seed. And something was growing again. They called it Echo Terra, a new beginning, built not on conquest, but on remembrance. Ships came, slowly at first, scholars, pilgrims, survivors, not to colonize, but to learn, to understand the species they tried to destroy, to walk their forests, to breathe their air, to hear, if only in whispers, the voice of a girl smiling in the dark, and the message her uncle left behind. You erased our bodies, but not our story, and as long as someone remembers, we are never truly gone. The world didn't look real at first. Echo Terra shimmered like a hallucination, a blue-green marble suspended in a field of light, cloaked in soft electromagnetic haze, pulsing at frequencies just outside normal perception. For days after its discovery, ships in orbit refused to descend, not out of fear, out of awe, because no one could explain it. No official star charts had recorded its existence. No ancient Earth telemetry showed its formation. Yet here it was, not just surviving, but thriving, untouched, uncolonized, and radiating the same kind of strange warmth that made the Echo ship so terrifying. Only this wasn't a weapon. This was something else. The first to land were not military. They were not diplomats, politicians, or planetary scouts. They were rememberers. That's what they called themselves. Scientists, artists, orphans of the Echo War. Some Garleans, some Valtis, even a few Veari defectors, all of them haunted by the broadcasts from the Echo ship and Aaron Voss's final act. Their purpose wasn't conquest. It was witnessing. The shuttle doors opened in a field of waist-high golden grass. Above them, the sky was an impossibly clear blue. Twin moons hovered in perfect balance. The sun burned gentle and gold, not too hot, not too bright. Birds they couldn't identify soared overhead, avian, but something different in their motion. Everything on the planet pulsed with a kind of harmony the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. They called the place they landed First Memory. It became a makeshift settlement within a month. Not cities, not even villages. Just outposts. Places of silence, of thought. Here, people remembered aloud. They recited stories, fragments of human history pulled from corrupted archives. They painted scenes of old Earth across rock walls. One child began carving Aaron's name into a stone every day, not because she had met him, but because he had made space for her to live. The movement spread. Back in Coalition space, not everyone celebrated. While a fractured few saw Echo Terra as a sacred rebirth, a symbol of second chances, others viewed it as the first domino in a new collapse. The rational purge re-emerged, this time more organized. They declared Echo Terra a threat to psychological balance, claiming its very existence was rewriting memory. Infecting species with human-style emotion through exposure to its strange energy field. They cited cases of echo contamination, soldiers who broke down crying at the sight of a tree, scholars who stopped speaking after seeing the stars reflected in Echo Terra's ocean. We are not meant to remember so deeply, one purge leader warned in a speech broadcast across 10 systems. It's unsustainable. It will destroy our society. Again. The coalition hesitated. They had no proof Echo Terra was dangerous, but they also had no explanation for why it responded to emotion. Because it did. Sensors confirmed it. When people remembered traumatic moments, the wind shifted. When someone whispered Aaron's name, flowers bloomed. When one Valtesi survivor sang a lullaby from Earth's archives, the moons aligned for a full night. The planet wasn't just alive. It was listening. Kaya Dren stood atop a cliff at sunset, her hand hovering just above the soil. She felt a pulse beneath her fingertips, not seismic, not magnetic, just felt. She had come to Ecoterra carrying guilt, for her species' silence, for the generations that had voted for extinction. But now she felt something else. Forgiveness. She didn't know if it was hers to feel. She didn't know if it was even real. But the land hummed with it. A kind of warmth that didn't come from fire, but from presence. That night she wrote in her journal, "The planet dreams, not of destruction, but of memory." And in that memory, it makes space for us all. The next morning, her journal entry was etched into a nearby rock, not carved by hand, but by the wind. The rational purge called it propaganda. The rememberers called it a miracle. The coalition called a vote. Proposal 882A, containment of Ecoterra, prohibition of access to preserve galactic mental stability. The motion passed narrowly, 9-8. Within days, a blockade was dispatched. 15 dreadnoughts, 6 sensor dampeners, and a fleet of psychological field stabilizers moved into Ecoterra's orbit. No one was allowed to land. No one was allowed to speak of Aaron. The transmission frequency broadcasting home was jammed. And yet, the planet kept glowing. Its 2 moons continued to orbit, undisturbed. Its oceans remained warm, and inside its forests, people were still there, because by the time the blockade was authorized, Ecoterra had already cloned itself. Unconfirmed reports began to emerge. A Garlean trade ship detected a planet with identical electromagnetic readings near the scar belt. A mining crew swore they encountered a memory forest on a previously barren moon. Entire regions of space began experiencing localized dreams, thousands of beings dreaming the same human memories at the same time. No one understood it. The coalition called it psychological warfare, but others whispered the truth. The echo engine wasn't just a weapon, it was a seed. And Aaron didn't plant one tree, he planted a forest across time itself. Zaxin, now living in exile on a broken satellite orbiting a dead sun, watched the chaos unfold. He received a transmission through a pirate signal, encrypted. A voice he hadn't heard in 5 years, a little girl, laughing. "Uncle Aaron says hello." Zaxin smiled through tears, not because he believed Aaron was alive, but because he knew the memory was, and memories were stronger than warships. 2 years later, the blockade failed, not because of violence, because of silence. One by one, coalition ships shut down, not destroyed, not attacked, just quiet. Crew members fell into dreamless sleep. Weapons failed to power. Fleet AI went dormant. When investigators arrived, they found nothing wrong. No viruses, no sabotage. Just one phrase left behind in every ship's internal logs. "You cannot silence what was born in screams." The blockade lifted. And when it did, Ecoterra welcomed them. Now, years later, the galaxy is not what it once was. Ecoterra is no longer a secret. It's a pilgrimage, not just for survivors, for anyone who wants to remember, anyone who wants to feel. There are no governments here, no armies, just stones with names, trees that hum, oceans that whisper lullabies in languages long dead. Some say the planet is haunted, some say it is holy, but those who visit say only this: there is a place in the galaxy that remembers what we tried to forget. A planet that sings in the voice of the last human, and if you stand very still, you can still hear him breathing. The war they feared never came. There were no fleets rising from Ecoterra's soil, no mind-controlled armadas, no AI legions seeded from the last human's rage. Instead, there were only stories, stories carried in data fragments, dreams, wind patterns, songs in forgotten tongues, and they were spreading. Faster than the coalition could censor them, faster than the rational purge could burn them. They called it the resonance, and it could not be stopped. On the trade moons of Theraxis, dock workers began waking up with songs in their heads. songs they didn't know, songs from a world they'd never visited. When they hummed them aloud, others joined in, without knowing why. A Garlean captain fell to his knees in the middle of a trade negotiation, weeping uncontrollably as he recalled a human child's final drawing. A sun, a tree, and a girl with a name he never knew he knew. Across the Valtese Empire, a cultural contagion took root. Artists, sculptors, and composers began creating works they swore came from a voice in the quiet, pieces that matched forgotten Earth frequencies. A painter named Jel Marn painted Aaron Voss's face, perfectly, without ever seeing a reference. He was arrested for treason. Within 3 days, thousands protested his imprisonment, not because they knew Aaron, but because they remembered what it felt like to be unheard. The Rational Purge went underground. They saw what was coming, not a rebellion, but something far more dangerous. Cultural disobedience, not with guns, with grief, with names, with songs, with truths that refused to stay buried. They launched a final campaign, Operation Silence, a system-wide effort to sterilize memory fields, erase recovered human artifacts, and reinforce digital filters that blocked emotional resonance from archived files. But for every archive they cleansed, 10 more appeared. The resonance had moved beyond physical space. It now lived in language itself. A new syntax was developing, merged from hundreds of dialects, sprinkled with Earth phrases once thought extinct. A Valtese child was caught writing the word home across her school's ceiling using invisible ink she made from fruit juice and light. She was expelled. Her video went viral across 400 systems. It became a symbol, not of rebellion, of refusal. Zaxxon had not spoken publicly in nearly a decade. He lived now in an abandoned observatory on the dead world of Narthros, surrounded by broken telescopes and static-filled radio arrays. A small group of rememberers had found him, not to worship, but to ask. They wanted guidance. They wanted to know what Aaron would do now. But Zaxxon had no answers, only silence. Until one day, while watching a dead star pulse faintly across the scanner, a message appeared. "They still don't understand. It was never about vengeance. It was about giving us back our names." The text wasn't encrypted. No signal traced it. Just a single file name. Sarah. Log. Zaxxon's hands trembled, not because he thought Aaron had returned, but because the echo engine might never have left. Elsewhere in the galaxy, echoflora began appearing. That's what scientists called it. Plants, fungi, and microorganisms genetically identical to nothing in the known biosphere, but with one anomaly. They reacted to grief. Not water, not sun, emotion. They bloomed at funerals, withered in rage, danced in joy, on a moon in the scar belt. A single flower bloomed the instant a child remembered her mother's voice for the first time. The plant sang. A whisper song, just loud enough to be heard if you sat perfectly still. Its lyrics translated roughly to, "You are not alone. Even in ash, the garden still grows." The purge tried to burn these growths. They burned fast, but always came back, sometimes in places that had never been touched by human presence. And then, the Echo Spire appeared. One day, without warning, it emerged in low orbit above Veari Prime, the same world that had first authorized the sterilization of Earth. The spire was black, smooth, and silent. It bore no weapons, no defenses, no markings, except for one word. Pulsing in human script, remember. The Veari military scrambled ships. Missiles were launched, lasers fired, nothing hit. The weapons passed through the spire as if it wasn't there. But on the surface, something changed. A low-frequency pulse spread across the capital. Suddenly, every citizen, every species, every age, was overcome with a singular, vivid hallucination. Earth. Not the scorched ruin the archives described, but lush. Alive, children playing, music drifting through the air, a woman baking bread, a boy flying a kite, Aaron sitting under a tree, watching them with a look that wasn't anger, but loss, and the voice of Sarah drifting gently through their minds. You tried to forget us, but we remembered you. Even when it hurt. When the hallucination ended, 19% of Veyri's military resigned. The spire disappeared the next day. Now even the coalition fractured. The Garleans left entirely, declaring themselves the Free Memory Accord. The Valtaisa voted to protect all ecoflora under planetary law, and the Drezkari offered their own atonement. They exposed every classified vote ever cast regarding Earth's destruction, dating back 200 years before the final strike. Every document, every meeting, every voice. It was a bloodletting. Public protests exploded. Council chambers were stormed. Archives once guarded by interstellar security were torn open by civilians. And in each case, they found one phrase repeated in classified documents: eliminate emotional risk. But it was too late. The risk had bloomed. And now, the galaxy felt everything. On Ecoterra, the soil glowed for 3 days straight. No one knew why. The sky turned a gentle shade of violet. Winds carried the smell of apple trees, even where no orchards grew. Rememberers claimed they felt Aaron walking the forests, not physically, but in the space between memories. A child said she saw him sitting under a waterfall, whispering to the planet. Her drawing of the moment went viral across 700 systems. No one questioned it, not even the skeptics, because by now, they all knew. The truth wasn't in facts. The truth was in the feeling that wouldn't die. The Rational Purge made one last move. They created a new AI, codenamed Clean Mind. Its purpose, to erase residual echo resonance from any system infected with human grief signatures. It was deployed to 12 worlds. On each one, it began sterilizing archives, disrupting memory fields, rewriting histories. But on the 13th world, Shazra 9, it failed. Because the planet itself resisted. Clean Mind reported environmental anomalies, winds that corrupted code, rain that altered logic gates, soil that rewrote its data streams. Then, a final log entry before system failure. We are not your enemy. We are what remains of love. You cannot delete what was never data. Clean Mind collapsed, and Ecoterra grew again. Now, the galaxy watches itself unravel, not in war, in truth, in memory, in names written on walls no one dares wash away. Everywhere, people whisper the names they were told to forget. Aaron, Sarah, Earth, and themselves. The children of those who survived the purge, who never knew Earth, never spoke to a human, never saw the echo ship, have taken up the mantle of remembering. They carry fragments on their skin, in their voices, in their art, and they are no longer afraid, because now they know. The last human didn't fight a war. He reminded us of one. And in that memory, we found our future. The galaxy was quiet now, not because war had ended, it hadn't begun again, not because peace had prevailed, it hadn't been declared, but because the echo had spread too far to be contained and too deeply to be denied. People were not fighting for power anymore. They were fighting to feel, and for many, that was harder. On the forested edges of Ecoterra, a child named Lyra sat beneath a weeping willow tree that had never been planted. It had appeared one morning during the violet sky bloom cycle, not grown, not sprouted, appeared. Some said it was memory manifest. Others believed the soil responded to the stories told around it. Lyra didn't care. She liked the way its leaves whispered when no wind blew. She liked how it listened without speaking. She was 7 cycles old. born on Echo Terra. She had never seen a fleet, never stepped foot on a warship, and didn't know what a coalition was, but she knew the name Aaron Voss, not from history books, from her dreams. He came sometimes, in shadows, always near water, sometimes beneath a starless sky. He never spoke, he just looked at her and smiled. All across the galaxy, monuments began to fall, not from force, but from disuse. Statues of admirals stood untouched, unread, forgotten. Memorials to battles once glorified now gathered dust. But in alleyways and forests, people carved new names. Sarah. Home. Voss. I remember. Children drew pictures of planets with smiles. Old soldiers whispered regrets to flowers that glowed in the dark. A former coalition historian wrote a new book, not a record of victory, but a collection of last words gathered from echo transmissions across 100 systems. He titled it, What the Dead Gave Us. It became the most translated work in known history. Zaxxon's bones ached now. He walked with a cane made from a fallen tree branch from Echo Terra's southern grove, the one where the stars seemed to hum if you stood still at dusk. He had grown old, alone. But he was not lonely. People still came to him, not for advice, but for truth. He had been the executioner once. Now, he was the witness. On the anniversary of Earth's fall, no longer called Extermination Day, but Remembrance Day, he stood in the soft dawn, facing the sea of names carved into the cliffs of first memory. He didn't speak to the crowd. He spoke to the stone. Aaron, he said quietly, you were right. He paused. Even after all this, they still don't understand what you were. He touched the name Sarah Voss, glowing faintly in the rock. But they're learning. He looked up at the sunrise. The sky changed color, not for drama, not for spectacle, for acknowledgement. Zaxxon smiled, then turned and walked back into the woods. He died 1 week later. In his cabin, they found only 3 items: a worn notebook titled, Echoes I Couldn't Speak, a child's drawing of a planet with a tree and 2 people beneath it, and a single message scratched into the wood of his desk. He didn't destroy the galaxy. He gave it a second chance. The rational purge died in silence. No wars, no bombs. They simply ran out of voices. Even their children stopped listening. Because resistance through erasure was no match for a truth that bloomed in every unguarded heart. You could suppress knowledge, but not grief, not hope, not the right to remember. Across hundreds of systems, a new tradition began. Once a year, on Remembrance Day, every transmitter in the galaxy paused for 1 minute of silence, and then a single voice spoke. The voice of Sarah Voss, recovered from the last echo log, broadcast with a clarity that technology alone could never achieve. We weren't dangerous because we fought. We were dangerous because we felt. And when you tried to erase us, we became something you could never forget. We became you. The planet that had once vanished, the one that should not have existed, now had more visitors per cycle than any other in the galaxy. Not for resources, not for conquest, for remembering. There were no flags on Echo Terra, no capital, no leaders, only stories, some written on stone, some sung to trees, some whispered to children in dreams. It wasn't a government, it was a garden, planted in ash, fed by grief, blooming in silence, and the soil never forgot who watered it first. Years later, a generation was born that had never heard of the coalition, never studied its laws, never memorized its victories. All they knew was that once, long ago, someone had tried to erase a people who remembered too much, and instead, those people became memory itself. That generation sang songs with no origin, built instruments with no name, told stories of a man who walked inside a ship that thought in sorrow, who carried a little girl's voice across the stars and turned trauma into truth. Some didn't believe he had ever existed. Some called him legend. Some called him Saint Voss. But the girl, she was always real, always present, in language, in dreams, in the way people held each other a little tighter at night. No one argued about it anymore. Because what mattered wasn't whether the story had happened. What mattered was that the story was remembered. And it remembered them back. In the very center of Echo Terra, where no one could reach, where no ship could land, and no scanner could penetrate, a black flower grew. Just one. It never bloomed. It never opened. It simply existed. Some said it was a remnant of the Echo engine. Others believed it was Aaron's heart, buried by the planet itself. But those who stood near it said they heard breathing, not of a man, not of a machine, but of the galaxy itself, exhaling for the first time in peace. Final log, Echo entry, 1001. Transmitter, Echo Terra Central Core. Date, unrecorded signal strength, infinite. This is not an end. This is not a monument. This is not revenge. This is memory. And memory is a seed? Plant it well. Water it with honesty. Grow it with grief and joy and truth. And it will feed the stars. We were the last. Now, we are everywhere. Echo out. Transmission ends.